Alright, so this is an oil pan gasket replacement video for a 2007 Silverado. That's what I have here. I'm going to work on 7 through 13 and on the Sierras as well. So I have a all AC Delco parts. This is the oil pan gasket 126 123 50, and then I'm also doing the AFM deflector shield install 126-39759. This is recommended for the oil consumption problem that most of these years have issues with. I think up to 2011. There's a bulletin, I'll put it in the comments for this video or the description, the bulletin number. And if you read the bulletin on oil consumption, there's a few fixes for it. One is the valve cover, and this is the other fix to fix your oil consumption. And then it says if it's still burning however many quarts over however many miles, that the fix is the piston ring. So this goes in the oil pan, so I'm going to do this too. Looks like this, you'll see it. And then I'm also doing the O-ring. Oh, I lost them all, they're all in the truck. The O-ring for the oil sump, which the oil pickup rather, which it goes bad quite a bit. So while I have it off, I'll do that too. I don't want to do this more than once, it's kind of a big job. All right, so in here we got some torque specs in case I forget later for the oil pan. So if that helps you guys. All right, everything's in foot-pounds unless it says inch-pounds. All right, so the first step is the removal of this cross member. You got 2 bolts on each side, both 18 mil. So bolts are out. Little pry bar in here on both sides, and it should kind of just work its way out. Just kind of alternate between the sides here. Okay. Okay, so this is about to drop. So I'll get that a jack tin of some sort. Not necessarily like a stilt jack like this, but you're gonna need something to support the front diff here, okay? So the first steps is you actually gotta drop that front diff down. You're not gonna remove it, but you gotta undo the bolts here on both sides, here and here. And then you got them, well, over here, here, and then here. And then you're just gonna let it drop down. And I'm gonna use this to kind of support it and drop it down like 6-8 inches, whatever it'll go. All right, so the bolts came off pretty easy. 21 mil on this side, 18 on that side. And then this will drop down slowly. All right, so the diff only comes down about 6 inches. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna try to get this out. I got quite a bit of room here. I'm gonna try to get this out, leaving the diff where it is and actually not taking the steering rack out, which is the next step. There is quite a bit of room here. I'm not gonna know until I get the oil pan loose if I'm gonna have to take them both out. So the plan now is to leave the diff where it is with about 6 inches of clearance and not touch the steering rack. And I might have to revisit that if this doesn't work. All right, so the oil was just drained, 15 mil. Now I'm gonna work on the oil pan bolts. So I'm gonna pull the oil filter. On this, you have to remove the bottom 2 transmission housing bolts because those also help secure the oil pan. So those gotta get removed along with all of the oil pan nuts all the way around. All right, so the oil pan's out. Obviously, as you can see, you did have to drop the front diff. It's not as bad as you think. The only thing I had to do besides those 4 mounting bolts that I showed you was disconnect the drive shafts on both ends. And that's just 6 15 mil bolts on both sides. And then the drive shaft, which is just 11 mil. Those cap bolts are 11 mil. And then it really just dropped right down. And then the pan does have to drop. It does have to drop straight down because of the oil pickup. The oil pickup, sorry it's dark, goes into the pan here. So you're not gonna be able to like wiggle it or finagle it loose at all. So the front diff does have to come out. And then, of course, the steering gear here, the rack and pinion there did have to get dropped down, just like the manual said. So listen to the manual. So now I'm gonna work on cleaning up the oil pan a little bit. The gasket from the factory is held on with these rivets. So there's one here, there's another here, it might be the only two actually. And all you gotta do, the manual says, you take a drill with a drill bit and you just drill it out. Just the tip of it, don't go any further, and then it'll come right off. So this AFM here, the valve, this is where that deflector is gonna go, which was part 2 for that the oil consumption fix. So that's what it is. So we're on the oil pan here. So this valve is a 17 mil, and it's gonna come right out. So I'm just gonna use this. Okay. It's not a very high torque. I think it's in inch-pounds. I'm gonna refer to that bulletin. All right, and then so basically, this sits here like this, and then this valve is gonna go right back. It's gonna screw right back in, okay? And then these oil passages, they're gonna be hidden inside this deflector, so the oil goes back into the oil pan rather than up towards the crankshaft. All right, so but before I do that, I kind of cleaned up the oil on the side here. You can see all this. This needs to be cleaned. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna kind of lay a rag in here because I'm not trying to contaminate the drip pan down there. So anything up here I can clean up. That falls in here I can clean up. Okay, so maybe try to cover that. And then I'm gonna take, I have one of these. This is kind of in rough shape actually. Or you can take some really fine grit sandpaper, really fine grit. You might actually even wet sand it. These are nice because they don't really score, they don't do damage. They just kind of buff. And I'm just going to buff off all these marks. The oil pan all cleaned up. I just flipped it around. So that wheel worked pretty nice. Didn't scratch it, just kind of buffed it, got it clean. Hit it with some brake cleaner. Kept the rag in here the whole time, so I didn't get any brake cleaner and the oil and all that. So now, if I can find that valve right. So the the technician, the bulletin is it's 10-06-01-008G, and it's the oil consumption bulletin. There's an F and the G. The G is the newer one. It's only a little bit different. But so that has the procedure for installing this shield under the AFM valve here. And so again, you're going to put that on, and then you just screw this back in. And you're going to tighten this to 20 foot-pounds. All right, so you're going to need a torque wrench, and then that's going to be it for this. When you're installing the new pan, you do not need to rivet it again. That's just something from the factory. You do not have to do that. I guess you could. Might make it a little bit easier. Okay, but that's all cleaned up. Now I'm going to show you removing the oil sump to do that O-ring, which is a common issue on, like, I think just the 2007, 2008. Oil pickup, there's this 13 mil bolt here, okay, right here. And then if you go around to the other side, it's a little harder to see up in there. There's gonna be, sorry, trying to get it for you guys. Let me switch this around real quick. And this is towards the very front of the engine. There's that one right there, and there's only one, and that's, I believe, is a 10 mil. And then this whole tube is gonna drop down. There's gonna be an O-ring under there. All right, so there's actually another 13 mil nut here holding it in. So there's one to the front, the middle, and then where the O-ring is. So looking at this O-ring, for the earlier models, like I said, they say this O-ring can go bad. I'm trying to focus here. This one actually looks, you can't see it here. I inspected it, it looks all right. Obviously, I'm still gonna replace it. So I'm just gonna peel that off. And I'm gonna put the new one on. So here's the new one. So I'm just gonna grab a pick. I'm just gonna take that off carefully and then throw the new one on. But yeah, it doesn't see, I mean, I don't see any visible damage to the actual seal. He's trying to focus here, sorry, it's not doing a very good job. I'll get rid of this light. But yeah, come on. yeah, it's not very bad, but so I'm gonna do the seal anyway. Obviously I got it, so I'm just gonna clean that up. And so that's not an issue on this truck, but you know, of course, while you got it out, since it's such a big job, that's just something you want to check, because this can affect your oil pressure, low oil pressure conditions in these trucks, along with the filter under the oil pressure sensor to the lifters. So that's one more thing to check. So I got the sump, the pickup, sorry, back up. One thing to consider is you obviously got to clean the face here as you clean the oil pan. It's hard to get this in there, or anything really. Brake cleaner is another option. I'm going to do the best I can with this, but don't forget to clean the face there, at least get it dry before you put it on. Alright, so in the menu I could not find torque specs for these, any of these bolts really, the 13 mil or the 10 mil by the seal. It just says the remainder of installation is reversible removal. Okay, so I just put them back nice and tight. You get it not to stick it. Alright, so that's cleaned up. The oil can here. All I gotta do is torque this 20 foot-pounds. I'm gonna put the gasket back on, and I'm gonna set it back up into the truck. Remembering that it has to go almost straight up. Alright, so that's the oil pins in. I got the bolts in, I gotta torque them. So don't forget, all these bolts around the whole front and side of the oil pan are gonna be 18 foot-pounds. Alright, these two long ones that came out of the rear, which are in my hand, those are 108 inch-pounds, and then these two for the transmission bell housing are 37 foot-pounds. All right, so the oil pan's all in, torqued all the bolts, it's all dry. Hit it with some brake cleaner. For me, it was leaking bad in this spot, so I got it a lot in this spot, make sure it's dry. So if it is still leaking, I'll know. So there was no torque sequence for the oil pan that I could find in the manual. So what I did was I did these rear two first at 106 inch-pounds. I went all the way up the sides. Once, not torquing them yet, just making them tight. And then the front. And then I went around like this, torquing them to 18 foot-pounds. All the way around like that. And then I put the two bell housing bolts in the back and just torqued them to 37. Went right in. Alright, so that's all in. So I'm going to double check, make sure everything's clean and dry before I throw the diff back in. I'm just going to lift it straight up and try to get the actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put straight up back into the mounts first. So back here, it's not that heavy. I'm going to get it back in. You might need another person, and then I'm going to put in the half shafts on both sides, and then the drive shaft, the U-joint. So that's the procedure. Alright, so this back in. Definitely want to hit these 4 bolts, the 18 and 21 with the impact on both sides, okay? When you put it in, you're going to start with the flange for the drive shaft like up towards the sky and kind of roll it in. And then the other hard part is just getting them past the half shafts on both ends, the CV axles. And then just, you know, try to get one nut caught on this side and the bolt caught on the other side, and then just hammer them in. All right, I'm not sure if I showed the steering rack in. I put the steering rack in first, tighten all these bolts with the impact as well. All right, so now I'm gonna work on getting these 6 CV axle bolts back in, and then the drive. All right, so that's the 6 CV axle bolts. Sorry, it's getting a little dark. Both sides. Just use the impact to get those back in. They fit in pretty easy. Okay. So I'm actually just going to take the half shaft here, and you can kind of angle it, right? Push it back a little to get it. Sorry about the video. To get it in place, I'll need 2 hands. And then the clamps and the 2 11 mil bolts are going to go back in. All right, so the last piece for, of course, adding engine oil is I'm gonna put this cross member back in. I believe it fits with the beveled side towards the rear. Nope, towards the front. Okay, so the side that's beveled there goes towards the front, and it's just gonna go right in. Here's the video. All right, and you're just gonna hammer it up and put the bolts from the front going into the back with the nuts on the back, okay? And just use the impact, or if you only got hand tools, of course, just to tighten. So cross members back in, just nice and tight. You know, so everything's good now. I did just want to say, you know, make sure you plug in the sensors that you unplugged. Like I had to unplug that oil sensor. I had to unplug this, and there was some clips along the way, you know, so I had to clip everything back in all the way up there. On the front of the old pan, there's this housing here. I had to unbolt that bolt right there in between those harnesses. And there was 4 total for the old pan. There was a bolt like that there on the passenger side, and then 2 for these rear plastic guards here in the back, one on this side, one on the other side. So those got to go back, and just take your time, make sure everything gets back. Don't forget to tighten the old drain plug, okay? And don't forget to put oil back in the engine. Yeah, don't get ahead of yourself. All right, double check everything, spray it down, and then go from there.